Trey Hendrickson played such a masterful chess move this week to the point where the Bengals may actually be on track to doing right by him. And in this video, I'll explain exactly how he did it. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and we can already tell that this is going to be one explosive offseason for the Bengals. Last week, we talked about why the Trey Hendrickson contract situation is a little bit more unique compared to the contract situations for both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, because let's be honest, the Bengals dragged their feet for far too long with both Chase and Higgins, and they will quite literally pay the price for doing so. But as for Hendrickson, I think for the most part, it's him who's kicking himself as to how things have played out for him because he accepted the one-year extension that the Bengals offered him in 2023, which is why he's not able to enter free agency until this time next year. And I'm certainly not condoning any lack of communication between the front office and Hendrickson. I think that is more of a widespread problem that the Bengals deal with, especially with their stars. But I think in terms of how they handle these contracts, I think they did all right with Hendrickson. But as we all know, that definitely has the potential to change this year because the one thing that they cannot do with Hendrickson is nothing. They have two options here, and they only have two options here. They can either A, extend his contract and give him the pay raise that he so rightfully deserves, or B, they can trade him and do their best to make the team as competent as they can without him on the roster. There is only two actions that they can do. There is no try in this scenario. There is no try to trade him but not being able to get the right compensation package. There is no try to extend him without reaching the deal. They can either extend him or they can trade him. And if you don't believe me, you can believe Trey himself. Hendrickson appeared on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week down at Radio Row at the Super Bowl, and McAfee brought up the comments that Duke Tobin talked about at the Senior Bowl about Hendrickson's upcoming contract. And Hendrickson said that he heard about it via a text from his dad, but more importantly, he said something that really did shock me. It wasn't the fact that his primary goal is to stay in Cincinnati where his son was born. It wasn't the fact that he wants the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. It's the fact that he wants the Bengals to win a Super Bowl whether or not he's on the roster. Like, he straight up said if negotiations break down and they aren't able to come to terms, he wants the team to trade him off of the team so that they can get draft picks in order to make a run for the Super Bowl with him not on the team. I'm really hesitant to use the word unprecedented here, but I really don't remember the last time an all-pro player of this caliber has said anything like this before. Because whether or not he was being genuine, and I have no reason to believe that he's not, he really did just lay down the law and said, hey, pay me or trade me, because doing what we did last year is not going to fly. Like, I don't normally grade how players do in interviews with big media members, but this has to be an A+ from Trey, right? We've all seen the same song and dance year in and year out whenever Duke Tobin makes his very rare appearances in front of the microphone and his posturing and making sure that he doesn't give up an ounce of negotiation leverage. But with a very relaxed demeanor in front of a national audience, Trey Hendrickson made it very clear what he wants. He made it very clear what his goals for this offseason are. He made it clear that he wants the Bengals to win and do what's best for them, whether or not he's on the team. In terms of ingratiating yourself with a fan base before a messy contract situation plays out, that is textbook from Hendrickson. And all that pressure that was on the Bengals to handle this right with Trey, it's still there, but there's a million pounds more of it now. And I think we're already seeing the impact of that, because just a few hours after that interview, it was reported by WLWT's Charlie Clifford that Hendrickson's agent is going to meet with the Bengals as early as next week to potentially iron out some of these details. So we'll get a clear indication weeks before free agency whether or not Hendrickson is likely to stay and sign an extension, or the Bengals are going to start fielding calls. And for Cincinnati, that is all that you can hope for at this point, because you don't know if he's going to be on this team in 2 years or if he's going to be on a new team in May. Because the worst thing that happens here is if this drags throughout the offseason like it did with Jamar Chase last year, and he's missing OTAs, and he's missing training camp, and as the team is begrudgingly facing questions about how to avoid another slow start, that will definitely have an impact on it. So getting ahead of this now in February, ahead of free agency, so you know what your financial situation is going to be when you're trying to better the team in free agency, that is what's most important here, to make sure that you're on the same page as to what's going to happen and you can be actually proactive about this for once. So kudos to Hendrickson for speaking up, saying what he wants very clearly, and potentially getting the ball rolling into a place that works out for every party involved. I still have no idea how the situation turns out, but I do think that Hendrickson made more of a positive impact this week than a negative one, and that is all Bengals fans can ask for at this point.